Good morning. Welcome back. For those of you who have joined us multiple times, I see a few community members. John, good to see you, who have been here for all four. We're on day 4. This is Thursday, July 10th of our budget hearings. Just a reminder, our budget hearings are for information purposes only. We don't take public comment at our budget hearings, but we do welcome public comment at any time via email or by phone or joining us on Wednesdays at our regular business meetings. If you have comments about our budget and what you hear at these gatherings. Today, we are focused on 5 different areas. It's a full day. Commissioners and our guests, please keep in mind, we've scheduled about 30 minutes for this time. So this is our targeted populations and especially focused on our vulnerable populations from 9 to 9:30. Then at 9:30, we have vital services, 10 o'clock infrastructure, 10:30 is land records and taxation, and 11 o'clock will be core services. I've learned not to go over all of these because usually a staff member will do that for us. And so I'll turn it over to Jill Joliker.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jill Joliker, Assistant County Administrator. I get to work with a lot of the partners that are around the table today. You've got one supplemental request from one of the partners. That's the STA Care Center. But we might just, before I go down to that, we want to make sure that we introduce all the partners that are at the table. I think that might be a good use of our time for starters. So.
I'm Pam Morgan. I'm the Director of Finance and HR at Douglas County Visiting Nurses Association.
Good morning. I'm Colleen Himmelberg. I'm the CEO at Cottonwood Incorporated.
I got you now.
I'm Megan Poindexter, Executive Director at the Senior Resource Center for Douglas County.
Janine Gracie, Executive Director for Trinity In-Home Care.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Maria. I'm the Executive Director of the Sexual Trauma and Abuse Care Center here in Lawrence.
Good morning. I'm Susan Harris. I'm the Executive Director for the Jayhawk Area Agency on Aging.
Hi, I'm Jessica Beeson, Executive Director, Willow Domestic Violence Center.
So, Commissioners, most if not all the partners around the table have been partners with Douglas County for a good amount of time. All of the agencies that you are, with the exception of the STA Care Center and Willow Domestic Violence, have been transitioned onto service agreements versus community partner agreements. And I think that's been a really great process over this past year. It's taken a little bit of conversations on understanding how do we get to the reporting outcomes that that we want to see from each of the agencies that are an accurate reflection of the services that are being provided. That's a key element of the service agreements, but that's been a smooth process. And then the STA Care Center and Willow will remain on the community partner agreement because they don't meet the threshold. SRC, as you know, is going to transition to becoming a county department effective October 1, maybe technically September 29th. That process continues to go really well. And then the last thing I was going to say is, before I just offer some highlights, I did want to make sure that to call out Jayhawk and the role that the partnership that they play with a bunch of different agencies, and that Megan's been a big part of. You heard about yesterday with LDCFM around Project Lively and the teams that are working really cross-collaboratively on the vulnerable populations that we're talking about today. So those are my highlight comments, and we can dig into any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Jill. Commissioners, questions for this group?
Hi, good morning. Hi, Sarah, welcome. I'm curious if you can talk to me a little bit about sort of your biggest overhead expenses in terms of, rent, utilities, non-personnel and non-programming costs. We have this budget report that has some details, but it's also it's relatively broad lines, right? So I'm just curious about the building space that your organization is in and sort of the costs of that and just a little bit more detail about those overheads.
Thank you. We do pay for the space that we currently have across from the LMH, which is where our primary office is. We have 2 satellite offices that we also pay rent at in different sites that we provide services. So all those are costs that we bear as an agency. We don't have any donated space that we use, so those are some of our overheads. We also have to cover fundraising, which is not funded by any grants because none of our grants will allow for us to fund for that. Their cost for appreciating maybe volunteers who serve the crisis line as well. All those are borne by our general funds, which at this point we have none.
Thank you. So you are paying rent on all 3 locations?
Yeah.
And part of that was me not remembering well enough if, and this predates your time here, but years ago, the county awarded some ARPA dollars to the care center for building updates and renovations. And what I couldn't remember about that was whether or not that included a purchase or if it was an owned building that you've just had to maintain and do utilities on, but you are also paying rent for that primary office. Is that correct?
Yes, we are. So I think that those funds were used to update the space because it wasn't an office space previously, or if it was, it needed to be brought up to date.
Yep.
So that staff can have a comfortable space to work and our clients can also have a trauma-informed space to be seen. So we updated a space that we're still renting and still paying rent for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I might have more questions, but that was top of mind if other commissioners have questions.
Just a quick one. I noticed in your write-up, you said you also service people from Jefferson and Franklin County. Do they give you any kind of contributions?
At this time, no, but we understand that, when traumatizations happen, they can flow from one city to the other. So we try to do prevention education in those places because prevention is cheaper than intervention. So we do prevention education and we do support groups in both Oskaloosa and Ottawa, and it's just 1 day a week. They're asking for expanded services. If we are going to provide that, we may have to ask for some form of compensation to be able to render the scope of services that they're expecting from us.
So you said that you updated a rental space with ARPA funds. What would happen if you left your lease since you updated that particular space? Do you have an agreement with your landlord?
Not particularly. The update that was done was really not structural, just aesthetics.
Okay.
Because some of the space had to be made usable as offices and compartmentalized in a way that would suit the number of staffing that we had. We don't have any agreement as to whether or not we will eventually have that space. One of the things I'm hoping that the city or an agency that may have a space to donate to us in the future is to move to a much larger space because we hope to expand services and we're outgrowing the space that we have now.
So if you were to expand services and move to a different space, would you still keep the other locations that you currently have?
If we have space big enough to take all of our staffing and the expanded services, we'll not need to keep 2 spaces in Lawrence, just 1.
Okay, all right. And because it looks like, I think you said you have rent on all 3 locations.
All 3,
Yeah,
all 3
okay. So
locations.
then you would just move to 1 location?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hello and welcome. So you have in for a one-time request for the 300,000, and I know you came in just shortly before this request went in.
Yes.
So you've had a little bit longer time to kind of get established in the organization. So I kind of just check in if that's still the need that you're looking at. And I'll pause for that one then.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it's still the need that I'm looking at because our funders require for us to have at least 3 months of operational cost to be funded. Most agencies have up to a year as a buffer because it gives them comfort knowing that if for any reason they don't show up, there's something that can bridge that gap. Right now, the State Care Center has 0 of that. And we're asking the city to give us the opportunity to be on the same guess leg as all other agencies because we are at 0. And if we're given that, it will go a long way. And our board is solidly behind us in building on that. If we're given, it's just one time. We're not going to come back to you every year and say, we need this money again. But we need it to prove to our agencies that we have a match of some sort and we have this unrestricted funds that will allow me and the board to be able to do fundraising and do other things that are not grant funded.
So I know that there was, for the time before you got there, and there was not an executive director for a period of time.
Right.
And I think what we had heard was that there wasn't a lot of, some of those grants weren't applied for, and there was a fundraising gap that went along with that. But I'm not really seeing it in the financial documents that we were given in this budget. I'm not seeing where that gap was. I do see that it was anticipated that the savings in 2025 would come from that time when there wasn't a director, I think with the salary line being lower. But I'm not sure, I'm not sure what those hiccups were and if your board is kind of ready to step up and continue in that role to make sure that they're fully supporting you, fully supporting the organization. Just sounds like some balls were dropped before you got there.
So it would make sense that we should have saved in the absence of an ED, but there were people that were tasked to do certain roles that the ED should have done, and they were paid stipends that took that amount of money that should have gone to the position of an ED, because there needed to be some sort of leadership in some ways. So we did not save any money by not paying an ED. Instead, we did give stipends to the leadership team to task them with administrative, grant writing, and supervisory positions that those monies were used to accommodate that. So no, there was no savings. And yes, our board has actually agreed to step up and make sure we don't find ourselves in that position again. We did already this year 2 fundraising events. And as you know, Lawrence is a very small town with 1,000,001 nonprofits. So we're all competing for the same kinds of funds and the same donor base. So we didn't raise a lot. Plus, I have to say, sexual assault is not a subject people want to talk about. They'd rather just sweep it under the carpet. But the truth is 1 in every 3 women has experienced attempted rape or rape itself. So it is a community cause that we're all supporting. So we want to be as visible as other agencies and for our work to be seen and also acknowledged and appreciated.
So you mentioned the lack of funds to be able to kind of cover a 3 months expenses, and that's one of the things that we as a body here look at for our organizations, just as a check-in for organizational health. I look for between 3 and 6 months.
Right.
Once it gets to about a year, we start saying, well, what do you need us for? Unless there's a plan for that. So just kind of that. We talk about that a lot in these circles. And the other question was, you mentioned the city. Do you also have a request in for supplemental funding with the city of Lawrence?
No.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I just want to make sure I understand your budget, because in your narrative, it talks about your 2025 budget is that you had a $57,000 deficit. I didn't see that in your, or maybe it's just not the way that I'm used to seeing it. Is that looking at your adopted budget to your current estimate?
Yes.
Okay.
So I utilized the budget that I adopted, but it had to be revised because a lot of things weren't adding up. And even as we're speaking, not all of the funding that we get is in our pockets already. So we may have to do another budget revision, which means we could experience even more deficit than this.
So thank you for that. And then I see your fundraising balance is 30,000, right? That's what you're estimating for fundraising?
Well, I'm going by what has been raised in the past couple of years. The hope is always to surpass, but I'm looking at precedents there. If that's all that's been raised in the past consecutive 3 years, maybe that's how much we're able to raise. Hopefully we can do more, but I'm projecting based on the history of what we've done.
Okay. Is it a requirement of your board members to donate to the organization?
It's a requirement for them to do fundraising, but
Okay.
each board member, as I've noticed, does a monthly donation, and it shows up that they're donating monthly, but they are out there with us doing fundraising work. We don't have a requirement for them to give money, but we have a requirement for them to find funders, to find people to sponsor events, to find other board members to come on board to help, look at the activities of the agency. So they do have a role to play as the guardians and kind of oversight people for the agency. But we're not requiring them individually to give money. That's not that, but to look for it and to source for options to be able to support what we have.
Okay. Thank you. We heard from the Child Advocacy Center that STA used to do some therapy for young people with them. Are you familiar? Does that make sense to you? I'm watching your face and it's looking like that's not what you do.
No,
Yeah.
we used to have a child therapist,
Okay.
but when I came in, there was none. And I did ask our therapists why they're not doing that. They did say that there were stringent requirements for child therapy. A lot of their documents, which they would not want to share, are very often subpoenaed. And it puts their, I guess, their license at risk. So they tread very lightly. And we have people who are still working towards their hours. Perhaps if they were fully licensed, it would be more comfortable to do that.
So if we fulfilled even part of your supplemental request, would you go back to doing that?
If there's a need for that, we will look for a therapist that can fill that position, absolutely. Or we could have one that would do part of their time doing child therapy and the rest adult therapy. Yes, we would be able to do that if there's a need.
Okay. Thank you. Any more questions for STA Care Center?
Sarah, you mentioned before when we were talking about the current spaces that you have and maintain that that your organization has a desire to grow and therefore you would need a larger space for that. And in that conversation, you also, or comment, you mentioned talking with other organizations or looking at spaces. Do you feel comfortable sharing any of the progress on those conversations or organizations that you're talking to about? I mean, are you having conversations about potential co-locating or sharing spaces? I mean, or is it just sort of a more theoretical idea that you see for long-term planning?
For now, it's theoretical, but I did speak to one of the city leaders who suggested some things that seem very feasible in the long run. We may be able to get other spaces that maybe will be cheaper or shared space with another agency, but I'm not talking directly, we are not talking directly with another agency. Just people giving ideas because I've got a lot of support from the community. They knew what the care center was experiencing. There's people reaching out to suggest, how about you do this? How about you do it this way? So and so did it this way and it was helpful to them. So, I mean, I'm willing to take all input and explore all options that are available to us. We would love a bigger space, but for now, we're okay where we are. This place has a lot of problems. One of the reasons we want to move, we currently realize that there are rats there, which everybody's kind of eked about coming to work, and we're trying to take care of that. But if we could do without rats or other things co-sharing our space, that would be a lot more trauma-informed space for us.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. And it's okay if you don't have the numbers now, but I would be interested to know as a follow-up if you can share with county staff sort of the approximate monthly cost for that main office space in Lawrence and what that is. If you know it, I see somebody raising their hand.
Yes,
One of your staff, if you want.
Yes, Laurie, our grant manager, probably wants to interject. Yes, it costs us $60,000 to maintain overhead a month.
Okay.
So what we're
For just
asking
that building? Sorry, I just want to make sure. Just that building or all
Our whole
locations?
house, everything. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, you were going to say more. I just wanted to make sure I
But that's
clarified.
okay. I wanted to see if she wanted to add to that.
If you
don't
want,
mind.
you're welcome to have another staff come up. Just make sure that they use the microphone.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Lori Blake with I'm the grant and data manager. The monthly rent at our Lawrence location is approximately $3,500 a month.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And then Sarah, just one last question. You mentioned before that you had some conversations with the city leader. Did you mean county, the Douglas County staff?
I'm sorry, county
Okay,
staff.
I just wanted to
County
make sure
staff,
I
yeah.
clarify because you mentioned city a couple of times.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just real quick, where are your other locations? If one of the three is in Lawrence, where are the other two?
Ottawa and Oskaloosa.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, but those other counties don't contribute to the work?
Not that I know of. I think we use general funds to pay for those spaces, and some of our grants pay for the rent of that. I think the governor's grant pays for that space. We don't use city or county money to pay for the Oskaloosa or Ottawa offices.
I had one last question. What date did you enter this position?
I came to Lawrence on the coldest day of the year, which was January 18th of this year, and I started work on the 21st because Monday happened to be a holiday. So I'm brand new, just learning about Kansas and the city of Lawrence.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions for STA Care Center or any of the other partners we have here?
Yeah, I had a question for Megan. I was just wondering how your integration is going and if you've discovered unexpected issues one way or the other, good or bad.
In my opinion, it's going quite smoothly. I certainly hope the county staff agree and that we're all getting along like good new friends, new besties. And it does seem to be going quite smoothly. We're on schedule as far as the projected schedule that we had outlined toward the beginning of the year. That schedule continues to become more nuanced. Yesterday, the IT department shared with me a detailed schedule for transitioning all of the IT components, which there's a lot of steps for that. That's probably the part that I feel the most nervous about because it's also the area I am the least of an expert in. And so we're really dependent on their guidance and they've been doing a great job.
Other questions for this group? Thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you for having us. You too.
So our next group is set to begin at 9:30. We'll take a little break here until that time. Okay, we are back at it. 9:30, and this is Vital Services, and I'll turn it over to Jill.
Hello again, commissioners. We are now going to talk about vital services. Specifically, we'll talk about some of the programs that the county funds in this category, but you've also got, so we've got representatives from a few different agencies. And I think just like with our last session, we'll make sure we allow for some introductions real quick.
Do I need to hold it? Yeah. Okay. I am Andrea Walker, the Executive Director of Just Food.
I'm Kristen Egan, the Housing and Human Services Program Manager here at Douglas County.
Bob Tryansky, Director of Behavioral Health Projects for Douglas County.
Here we go. Katie Barnett, Counsel for Lawrence Humane Society.
See if this is on. Nope. Shannon Wells, Executive Director for the Lawrence Humane Society.
And Karen from the Lawrence Community Shelter, I think, is online. If you want to introduce yourself, Karen. Okay. Karen's the finance manager. I think that's her title with Lawrence Community Shelter. Well, there are two, you've heard from introductions from all the agencies. I'm glad you get a chance, if you haven't already met Kristen Egan, our new-ish Housing and Human Services Program Manager that primarily oversees the Housing Stabilization Collaborative, but is also providing a lot of assistance with some other collaborative projects. The new Flexible Housing Pool Program, she's providing some really integral support on. And Kristen has also taken on some of the work related to MyRC along with the IT department that I'm really grateful for. You've got two supplemental requests. Well, actually, two supplemental requests within the admin, three supplemental requests within the admin department. And you have a supplemental request from Just Food. And beyond that, we can open it up for questions and see where we go.
I was wondering if Just Foods could describe the impact of government cutbacks for us and how that's affecting your operation.
Yeah, I definitely can. So the impacts that we've had occur already are with our food. So we don't have direct federal funding at all, but we do receive federal food. So those impacts are with CSFP, which is the Commodity Senior Food Program, and then TFAP, which is the Emergency Food Assistance Program. So with TFAP, we've lost about 30% so far in cuts. That weight depends every single month, but it's around 30%. And then with CSFP, the challenges that have happened so far is if someone moves from another region or location to us, they are going to lose their CSFP currently, or if I think we're still on a freeze hold, so we can't sign anybody up new with CSFP. The big beautiful bill just passed, so we are waiting for the impacts of that.
And do you have any, when are you anticipating to actually know when those impacts are actually going to come down? Have you heard anything?
Not yet.
Okay. Thank you.
But we are waiting.
You're waiting.
Yeah, to hear when those impacts will occur and how it'll affect us. I mean, it's going to affect everybody that's utilizing SNAP, and I think it's only going to increase the number of people that are participating.
So as you prepare for the school year, can you talk a little bit about, as you prepare for the school year, how you're mitigating some of that risk?
Yeah, so we just started with the Douglas County Community Foundation, we just opened up a pantry fund specifically for schools to try to alleviate some of that while also diversifying our budget. So that's one way. Every school that does something different, so each school decides how they want to distribute food or run their pantry. So some do like an actual pantry in their doors front, and while some do meal kits. It just depends from school to school. I'm anticipating that the need will go up. We haven't had communication with schools a lot yet. It usually happens around August.
And then for the funding, if you were not to be funded, how would that actually impact your operations?
So we're already maxed out with our current food budget. So we don't have the ability to increase at all. And then also food costs are still shifting all the time, going up and down. One of the last statistics I ran showed that instead of it being about $1.38 per pound, what we were paying, it was like $2 a pound. It did go back down after a week or two, but it's just constantly shifting. So it's always varying what we can bring in. So we're actually not able to purchase as much poundage because of that inflation.
And because of the constantly changing landscape, have you also had other funders and or partners that have had to step away because of they're also losing funding, or their capacity, right, is also changing?
So we're over 80% donated dollar. So we have had some people that have had to step away from making their monthly regular contributions because of inflation costs and other housing, everything that everyone is experiencing currently. We haven't had any of our large funders step away though.
Thank you.
83% donated dollar. So
I know we asked this last year, I'm going to ask
Mhm.
again. Do you have plans to use your fund balance? Because you talked about, I mean, these costs are rising and your food budget is maxed out, but you have more than a year's worth of reserves in your fund balance. So what's the plan for that?
So we took $100,000 out of the fund balance this year and shifted it into our budget for this current year to do strategic planning and consultation.
But not food purchases?
No, we kept the food purchasing at the same level for right now.
I have a different question and others can poke on that one if they want to, but what schools are you in for pantries?
We're in Lawrence High, Eudora Public School District, Baldwin Public School District, Free State, Deerfield, New York Elementary. I mean, almost every single elementary school, not every single middle school, right, Ellie? Yeah, it was like, we have 28 partners across the board. That includes all schools, Haskell University we partner with, but it's through a church across the street, not actually on site, as well as KU.
So I know some of our other school districts get trickier because they don't have facilities in Douglas County. Our kids are going out of county for schools. Some of our other school districts, Perry Lecompton being one that's kind of split between the two. But Lecompton Grade School is in the county. Is that one, or do you have a location at Lecompton Grade School?
So we don't have a pantry at Lecompton Grade School because Mary Jane Hoffer, who runs United Methodist, but she's the heart and soul of Lecompton, if you know who Mary Jane is. She coordinates with all of the families in Lecompton and comes and gets food and we distribute. And we also do cruising cupboard up there as well. So we also use our mobile food pantry to go to Baldwin, Eudora, and Lecompton.
Okay, that makes sense. As I know the food pantry that's in the Methodist church there gets well utilized. So are they accessing food from Just Foods to help with that pantry?
Correct.
Okay. Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the fund balance question that Commissioner Willie started. Can you tell me what emergency would constitute a use of the fund balance?
I think we're about to be in an emergency situation with the current state of where we're at.
So is your request for the additional funding, the $50,000, is that to avoid using your fund balance?
I don't think it is to avoid using the fund balance. I think it's to prep us for where we're headed.
Okay.
Like with the big, beautiful bill passing, I think it's going to be extremely detrimental. Like just 2 weeks ago, we had 242 households we served in the first 3 hours. We're just bursting at the seams and we're not able to keep food on the shelves.
Okay, thanks.
To clarify, you did say that you've taken 100,000 from that. Is that reflected in this number? Has that been since you would have submitted this in April?
It should be reflected
Okay,
in this.
just
Yeah.
curious what the timing of that was. Oh, I had another question before and it just floated away. So
It'll come back.
somebody else. Thank you. Somebody else has to.
Did you come up with your question? Because I was going to move this on to a different partner.
I think it's actually for Sarah. Well, to clarify, 80,000 is the Sarah or Jill, sorry. You're just not very visible to me, Jill. 80,000 is the threshold that we determined for whether you're a community partner or agreement or a service agreement, right? So
Correct.
If we were to fund this request, that would double the money that the county gives now and put you into the space of a service agreement. Is that something that you all have discussed?
We
And
talked
what the
about it briefly.
particularities of that are? Okay.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly when we did our administrative review, and I think Just Food could manage that. I think we'd want to structure the scope of services, talk a little bit more about if that is going specifically towards food purchasing, some of those types of things, but I feel confident we could manage that.
Thanks.
And I would point out the the 2026 budget in our book shows 50,000 from Douglas County as the status quo from last year, but it's actually 40,000. So then the additional request would be on top of that, right? Okay, just checking.
I was going to shift over to one of the administration requests. This one is specifically for the youth pre-apprenticeship program. And I'm interested to understand what conversations you've had with the school district about this program.
I haven't had any, this part of this request is reflective of the post-secondary focus area of the anti-poverty community health plan. That part of the community health plan is really reliant on the work that Peasley Tech has been doing historically. In my request, and I apologize, I had it pulled up a minute ago. I have too many screens open. That Peasley is having school groups in and out of the building on a regular basis, doing tours, but also organizing the pre-apprenticeship opportunities. So I have been historically relying on the work that Peasley has been doing and the stakeholders that they have involved. I know that they regularly engage with the school district partners, and they're regularly getting requests to be able to accommodate more programming. And because of the funding that they have available, they're limited.
So is these pre-apprenticeship programs happening during the day?
I believe
The
so.
school day?
Yes, I believe so.
So the school district is receiving funds, per pupil funds, so they could be contributing to this.
Yes.
Right? And students pay textbook fees already. I'm just trying to get an understanding of how much this is a partnership and how much this is Peasley Tech. It sounds like it's Peasley Tech's request more than it's administration's request.
It is, but it also is something that was talked about a lot in the anti-poverty community health plan in terms of how do we encourage more young adults if we're taking that whole family approach. We want to see more. We want to also see adult learners looking at apprenticeships, but how do we get future generations to take advantage of that and start exploring living wage jobs that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree, and the paths that an apprenticeship program can offer, and the capacity of Peasley to be able to accommodate the number of requests that they get from young adult learners to provide that pre-apprenticeship experience is somewhat limited based on the funding that they have available.
Okay.
Commissioner, if I may, I'll pull on that thread a little bit more. I think I'm still unclear, maybe it doesn't matter to hang on it too much, but what the benefit or particular strategy is for having it as a request through administration rather than a direct request from Peasley.
It could have gone either way.
Okay.
It was because it was something that has been identified as a core strategy in the anti-poverty community health plan. I think we could have gone either way.
Okay. So that helps me. I just want to make sure there weren't any sort of logistical reasons or administrative processes that we felt like it made a difference.
No, and I think I know you all have probably seen also, there's a major piece. This is exactly what part of the larger community fundraising effort that Peasley has underway with the Peasley Promise. They've launched this large endeavor to raise the $500,000, I think is or $5 million, excuse me, that they're working to raise to make sure that they have the funding available to meet this need. So I think it was, it dovetailed nicely with an existing initiative of Peasley. And the thought again was just because this was something that there was a lot of consensus in the community, in the anti-poverty group, that it would be a significant step to advance that part of the plan.
Jill, if you could follow up with Peasley and let us know, that the cost includes tuition, instruction materials, tools and supplies, and access to labs and workshops. I'm really interested in how the school district has been requested, because students who will be attending a pre-apprenticeship program are not in school at that time. So there should be dollars that were set aside for instruction, materials, textbook, all those things. It may not cover the full cost of
Mhm.
Beasley Tech and their programs, but it should cover something.
Okay.
And I'd just be interested in what those conversations have been and how the school district may be supporting this idea.
Yeah, I should have asked Kevin to be here, so I apologize.
It's
That's
okay.
my bad.
Yeah, you could follow up on that.
I can.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of seeing this as maybe it'd be more efficient for Peasley to track some of these measures and outcomes through our agreement with them than to have staff. But can you, is there a benefit that you see to having kind of more oversight within Douglas County versus having that be with our partner?
No, I think we could do it either way. I think we could, it was again, just a way to highlight what has been identified through that coalition, that community health plan.
And Jill, do we know how the students will be identified to participate in this program?
From what I understand, they're identified currently by the schools.
And which schools identify them?
It's all middle school age. They do have, but they also, they're doing middle school, they're doing elementary school tours and visits. So there's elementary school age kids that come through from all of the Douglas County schools that are seeing all the cool things that are happening there, and it's piquing their interest. So when they do hear more about those pre-apprenticeship opportunities when they're in middle school and high school, and the pre-apprenticeship programs do start, I believe, at middle school age. That's how they're hearing about them.
So do we know if all of the schools across the county are participating?
As far as I know, they are, but we can get that. I can confirm that with Kevin.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have Kevin here to ask that. That's a topic I poke on a lot. And I've been really pleased with the answers I've gotten back from Kevin and Peasley as far as what schools that they engage with, and the tricky ones being those, Douglas County students that reside in Douglas County and attend a school that's outside of Douglas County. But it's maybe better to have him answer the question, but I've felt pretty confident overall. I would say that they also bring in students from school districts outside of the county, I think DeSoto and Ottawa, perhaps. So that would be, that's the only thing I could see of the benefit of holding it here, or just we tell them like this goes for Douglas County students.
Other questions for this group?
I have questions about another request from admin for the, well, actually, let me rewind and start with one and then go to the next one. So the request to replace the HUD dollars that we talked to me about, do we know definitively that those are not coming, or is that still
We don't. So for this year, we did get some information about what the funding that we should have received before April 1 that would have started. We're already behind. We were awarded funding for this year to continue the permanent supportive housing program, an extension of the $321,000. A renewal grant is what they consider it. It was approved. Technically, it was approved in 2022, but with the timing of how HUD works, we did not get a contract approved and the funding in place to launch the program until January 1 of 2024. So the initial year of that grant was 15 months because it was a new program. It was a new grant. That grant term ended on March 31st, and ideally we would have gotten the funding we'd have the funding in place, the 321 in place in our what's the eSnaps account to be able to start fresh. We have not gotten a contract or the award agreement for the next term, the 2024 COC grant. We did get some additional information about that grant yesterday that did notify us that the funding is going to be $187,600 short. So we already know that it's going to be lower for this year. The concern for 2026 is that everything that has been published about the proposed budget for the next fiscal year for the federal government is that COC grants related to permanent supportive housing are not going to be included in the budget. The shift is going to be more towards transitional housing. This is, as the program is titled, Permanent Supportive Housing. It's focused exclusively on, our grant is exclusively, it's a housing first program. It's 100% dedicated, which requires that we have to serve folks that are documented as being chronically homeless. So these are folks that have significant challenges that have been unhoused in our community for a good amount of time. And without this funding, we're going to be very challenged to keep them housed. The program has been successful in getting those 12, it funds 12 households. Those 12 individuals have been housed and are sustaining housing, and some of them are even paying rent. It requires that they pay up to 30% of their income. If they don't have any income, they don't pay anything. But some of them do have income because they've finally been able to get stabilized and get qualified for disability. And it's really cool when they come in to pay their rent. Folks know Brooke, folks know Josh, and they're feeling really good about where they're at in life because they're actually able to contribute. So I just want to sprinkle that in. And I know this is something that overlaps with the behavioral health chip as well. But right now, for 2026, we don't have anything confirmed, but we don't want to lose. We want to make sure we can sustain the program.
Thank you. Well, I'll just pause there before going to a different request for Housing and Humane Services in case commissioners want to talk more.
I'll ask just a little bit more. Go on. So from the January 1st of 2024 until March 31st, 2025 was that first grant. The second grant, we applied for it and were awarded it, but we're not sure that it's coming through, correct? And it should have been here by now.
Yes.
Okay.
I got information that confirmed, Brooke and I got information from HUD yesterday that confirmed that that amount would be, it would be $187,600 less than what the application was initially approved for. So we already know that we're short. But again, we still have not gotten a grant agreement for that from HUD. The good news, I guess, is that just about a lot of other COC funded agencies in Kansas, we're the only COC funded project in Douglas County. All the others are in the balance of state across the state of Kansas. Others have gotten their contracts, but we haven't. But for sure, we know that we're going to be short $187,600 for this year.
For 2025?
Correct.
Out of the total amount that was anticipated of?
$321,032.
Okay, thanks. And when you say like we're already behind, it's that the federal government is behind in processing that, whether it happens or not. But it's not that we've done anything on our part that puts us behind.
We've done nothing. But when I say we're behind, we're short. We know we're going to be short $187,600 because that's the decrease in the amount of the award has changed.
And the amount that's suggested for the supplemental is $561,804. Is that for 12 months within 2026?
Correct.
And it's eligible for the mental health sales tax, but that would be an ongoing programmatic need, correct?
It would, unless there's a miracle and the program gets reinstated. So there's a lot of PSH, really successful PSH programs in the state of Kansas. So
yes. Permanent
supportive housing. Yep.
Right. Thanks.
I just was going to add, commissioners, that, in conversations about federal grants that specifically the county gets that are in jeopardy, it's pretty much this one. We don't get as much federal grant awards as, say, a city does because we don't run an airport. We don't have as much transit. We don't have as much transportation dollars. We don't run a utility. So from our perspective, it's pretty much this. We've heard from our other, like our emergency management grants, those are secure. So this is pretty much our major area of concern related to grants that specifically come to Douglas County that would be at risk.
And sorry, just a little bit of math. So the 321 that was anticipated for 2025 was 3/4 of the year, right?
Yes.
So a full year would have been 428, if I did that right. But the request is for 561. Is that an additional amount or is it intended to stay flat?
So that amount is for April through December of this year and next year. I did I put the, sorry, I
Got
could
it.
have clarified that. So
Okay.
there's one-time money for this year to get through this year. And it's an updated number now that so for the rest of this year, we'd need
133, 432? No, we're short, the 187.
the 187. Yeah. Next year and then next year it's 321 for 2026. Just
Be for their deliberations, we can get them.
Yeah.
I'll get it. Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you. I'd appreciate it.
Because when I put the request together, I didn't have the information that we got yesterday from HUD.
It's always evolving.
Yes.
So are you saying that the request just went up? Is that what you're saying?
No.
No, okay.
It'll, if anything, for this year, it'll be a little less.
Okay.
Because I've been operating under the assumption that we weren't going to get anything this year. Because everybody in the COC has been kind of in the dark on existing grants that should have come through this year.
Okay, so we're going to get an updated number.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anything else for this group?
Okay. My other question is about the child care one. I just wonder if you can elaborate on what this, because this is also a request that's born out of the community health plan, the anti-poverty plan, one of the work groups, right? And so this is sort of a community-based request. And I'm curious to get a little bit more detail, if you have it, about what attempts to engage. There's some commentary in here about previous efforts to engage the private business sector to fund these scholarships, childcare scholarships, have so far been unsuccessful. And due to a lack of leadership with business industry groups and without a clear understanding of the public sector commitment, I'm just going to flag for myself. I meant to ask some of our economic development partners about that yesterday, but looked over that question yesterday. So I just wonder, Jill, if you can color that in a little bit and what you know about our attempts to, our community's attempts to really get some private funding for this scholarship fund.
Yeah, that statement that's in there is really speaking to, there was an individual that used to work at the Lawrence Chamber, Hugh Carter, that was really an advocate for for identifying and elevating the role of childcare in workforce development and a thriving economy. Hugh was also a board member at the Children's Community Center, and he was also actively involved in the last iteration of the Anti-Poverty Community Health Plan. Childcare has continued to be a big part of that. So that the involvement of him kind of wearing two hats, being on the board, and also his work at the chamber. Before he joined the board of the Children's Community Center, he'd been organizing a handful of field trips, if you will, to different child care facilities in other counties and communities to talk about the investment of local businesses in high quality child care. So when Hugh left the chamber, honestly, we haven't had a lot of opportunities. I will say that Peaslee Tech has been working really diligently to understand how to effectively engage, how to utilize the child care apprenticeship program effectively in partnership with the area child care providers. The challenge continues to be that those child care providers, are going to always be limited in meeting the wage needs that they have to be ready to pay. I think it's $17 an hour. $17 an hour is the starting point for when they start the apprenticeship. And when they end that apprenticeship, the goal is that they are paying $21 an hour. And a lot of the child care centers can't do that because of the overall limitations in their budget. So if you look at the other end of the child care budget scenario for those organizations, it's how much are their families able to pay? for care. And then we know that there's a lot of families that, sorry, that's going to go off where you didn't ask. Peasley's been trying, I think, on one aspect, but beyond that, we have not seen a lot of engagement of the business community.
Thank you.
I'm glad for that part of the conversation because I do see that this used to have leadership through some of our economic development partners. It's not getting leadership at that point. I've been meaning to check back in with the CCC, the
Children's Community
Center, about that because I've been kind of hearing that the business community has not been stepping up in the way that was kind of pledged or anticipated for that. I'd be possibly more interested in looking at how do we use this as a challenge or a match with our business community. That's just a thought for further conversation.
I did want to say, I think a lot of you may be aware because you get the reports from the EDC, the work that is happening in Baldwin around developing a child care center. They have their own EDC and they've been using, they've accumulated a significant amount of one-time money. A lot of it has come through the sale of tax credits through Network Kansas. Baldwin sells a lot of tax credits and they get the proceeds of that and they are setting that aside to develop a child care facility in Baldwin City. That's largely led by their EDC.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Dave Hill. And we did structure it as a challenge grant too. You heard from Positive Bright Start in our CHIP update recently, because they have a history of managing those scholarship funds historically. I think that would be, and they already work really effectively with the other centers. I think that they would be continue to be an effective, administrator of those funds. But the way that we thought about them was that it would serve, the county funds would only in increments match what were coming from the community. It could be coming from the business community. And so that the amount that's been requested could theoretically be matched in increments as it would come from other sources in the community.
And it's listed as one time as kind of a pilot program or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think just to get things going and sparked.
Just not sure that the need will change that much in a year. And I just could see partners coming back and saying, well, you did it last year.
Absolutely.
I think this would be a hard one to maintain it as a one time unless we were really clear.
Jill, just to be clear, did you go to the chamber or the EDC and say this was a concept and could they back it? Could they match it? Could they get behind it? Did you do that?
No, I
Okay.
haven't. I would just say, at one point we did have folks from the chamber EDC participating in the CHIP meetings, but it's off.
Any other questions for this group, commissioners?
I want to circle back to the HUD housing replacement line, and this is just probably not a great thought exercise, but still wanted to kind of run this by. I know HSC has received less funding. It's not been funded through the city or through AHAB as it had been in the past. So sometimes when we're looking at specific dollars for specific things, and I kind of wonder, is that the right place, or is HSC the right place, or is HSC accomplishing what we need it to be? Is it better to be in specific line items? So just something that maybe something we wrestle with, and maybe not even necessarily during budget time, but just what's the best use of dollars in the community for housing stability, et cetera.
I think this is something that Kristen and I were talking about just yesterday, and I thought would come up, and I think she's got some great thoughts on that.
So I'm new to the program, so I haven't been with it when it was more robustly funded. I think as the funding's dwindled, we need to, as a group, talk about the best way to use that money so that we're not simply delaying homelessness, but actually stopping it for some of these people and families. So that's something we're trying to look at as the year goes on, and then maybe make some changes to make it a little bit more sustainable.
And Kristen is uniquely positioned. If you don't know, she was the regional coordinator for the Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition for Douglas County. So your perspective also on the need for permanent supportive housing. To Commissioner Willie's question, you know that need because you would see those numbers in the coordinated entry list.
Yeah, we won't solve homelessness without more permanent supportive housing. We just won't. Some people can live with a little bit of support, but a lot of people that we've seen for years, when you go downtown or to the library, they won't stay housed without PSH. That's just best practices. That's nationwide known. This new administration doesn't want to prioritize that, which will be a problem.
Yeah, and I think what you can expect to see later this year, I hope later this year, the first quarter of 2026, it'll come through Kristen on behalf of the HSC, the Housing Stabilization Collaborative, is to your comment, Commissioner Willie, what I think will be a proposal to utilize the HSC dollars a little differently, because what we're seeing now is we're not able to fund as many households. There's still the number of households that are requesting that funding versus what we're able to fund it's incredibly skewed. We're also just seeing we're not able to, as Kristen said, truly know that we're preventing homelessness. And frankly, there remains to be a power dynamic between renters and landlords, that I think that there's an opportunity for multiple solutions. And that's like, we're going to dig into that actually tomorrow at HSC. The Lawrence Douglas County Health Department has done an analysis of renter protection policies and practices that have demonstrated to be effective in different parts of the country, as well as here, even in the Midwest. So looking at pre-file eviction diversion, as has been happening to a certain extent at the Self-Help Center, mediation, rent and utility assistance, tenant right to counsel. How could a handful of or more targeted strategies more effectively serve our priority population? But I mean, we already know that that's going to be a hard transition for if we shift the way HSC dollars are utilized. There's going to be some big feelings, but we're really struggling with, are we truly preventing homelessness, and are we keeping folks housed in the most effective way?
And I'm excited to hear some of the outcomes from those conversations. I feel like I have a lot to learn in that space.
Yeah,
So.
so right now it's really low barrier, which is awesome. Low barrier is fantastic. But when you don't have a lot of money, low barrier can also be a problem. So we changed it. You have to have an eviction notice or disconnected utilities now. I think, and again, this is my second full month actually doing it, I think that's leading to people coming to us because they already have evictions with very high past due amounts. And if they are not able to sustain that rent going forward, so if they're not actually living in something that's affordable to them, it makes us a little bit uncomfortable to pay the past due rent without making sure they have sustainability going forward.
So it's like the lesser of two evils. Are we preventing an eviction or yet another eviction on their record? Or are we preventing them being homeless? Like,
Yeah.
we don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's a discussion that will evolve.
No. Okay. Anything else, commissioners? All right. Thank you all. Appreciate it. We'll move on, or a little bit behind. We'll move on to Public Works and Zoning. Thank you. Bye, Brandon. Okay, it's 10 o'clock or 10:12 actually, so it's time for infrastructure, public works and zoning. Sean, you want to kick us off?
Sure. I think maybe at the risk of being a little soapboxy on this, I just kind of want to go over public works and zoning codes just generally. Public works is responsible for the physical infrastructure that supports everyday life. So that's your roads, your bridges, your stormwater systems, parks, and then when it starts getting cold, snow removal. Zoning and codes is about regulating land use, building standards that ensure safe and orderly sustainable development. Ultimately, it's about protecting property values, preserving public safety, balancing growth with infrastructure capacity, preventing incompatible land uses, and ultimately advancing community goals. I say all that just to kind of just lay the groundwork that these are, this is beyond sort of the technical side of things. It's really about the foundational tools that make the county safe, sustainable, drive economic growth, and then ultimately enhance the quality of life. Tanya and Chad are both here. I think we both of them have a supplemental request within the budget this year. Chad kind of went through last couple of meetings ago, just sort of the general nature of that request. And then Tanya can speak to a diagnostic review as far as the zoning code is concerned. So at this point, I'll just turn it back over to you all.
Thanks, Sean. Questions for this group?
Hi, Tanya. Morning. I'm just curious a little bit about the what sort of timeline you anticipate if this were approved for that diagnostic review, like about how long you think it would take, and then after the review was complete, what would your next steps with that be in terms of talking to the commission or what your internal processes might look like?
Yeah, Tanya Voigt, Zoning and Codes Director. I'm thinking with the diagnostic, we would treat it similarly to any time when we're working with a consultant. And so typically, right now we're working on a hydraulic analysis of the Wakarusa corridor. That time frame is approximately a year. The open space plan was a much larger plan, a comprehensive plan that took, a year and a half. So our hopes would be that we would be able to do kind of this down and dirty of specific conflicts that we're seeing in the code. I would say 6 months to 12 months. And then our hopes with that diagnostic is just that it's going to identify some of the problems and then help provide solutions or ideas for solutions. And then our department would take forward the implementation of those solutions. So once we receive the diagnostic, we'd bring that information to the commission to see how you feel about those priorities as well. And then we would implement the work that the commission is interested in.
So we had a fairly extensive report from Chad on asphalt and concrete. So I don't have any questions for Chad. Does anybody else?
No, because I wasn't able to attend that, but I watched it and all of my questions had been answered that I thought I brought forward. So I didn't even poke Chad afterwards.
Anything else for Tanya or Chad? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll take a 15-minute break and then be back at 10:30. All right, we're moving on. After a short break, it's time for land records and taxation. We only have one supplemental here, but Jake, I'm stealing your thunder, aren't I? I'm so sorry. And we'll turn it over to Jake.
Thanks, Commissioner. Now we have the land records and taxation, like you said. First, we have the appraiser's office, and they are the starting point for property taxes through property value assessments. Key responsibilities include mailing annual valuation notices, processing value appeals, and certifying the tax roll to the county clerk by June 1st each year. Next, we have the county clerk, and they have two main areas of responsibility. One is the general government division, which handles accounts payable, maintains the tax roll, issues revenue neutral rate notices, and submits the state abstract. The other division is responsible for administering elections. Next, we have the Register of Deeds office, and they serve as a recording and information center for real estate located in Douglas County. And in 2015, the state legislature began phasing out mortgage registration fees and replacing them in part with filing fees. And as a result, revenue from the Register of Deeds has declined over time. Annual revenue is expected to level off at around 850,000, 900,000 under the current fee structure, and Kent Brown can provide additional details on those projections. And then finally, we have the treasurer's office. And this office collects and distributes property or ad valorem taxes for the county and all other taxing jurisdictions in the county. The treasurer's office also collects revenue for the motor vehicle operations fund from vehicle registration fees and satellite office fees collected during vehicle registrations and renewals. However, the revenue in this fund is not keeping pace with the cost of maintaining motor vehicle staffing levels. As a result, multiple positions have been moved to the general fund over the past few years to sustain operations. Moving forward, any additional personnel expenses in the treasurer's office will likely need to be absorbed by the general fund through an increase in fees or both. The treasurer's office also manages the county's investments. Interest rates have increased significantly since the lows of around 0.25% during the pandemic to around 4% now. And the treasurer has one supplemental request, that's the only one in this group, for one new full-time position, a registration tax specialist. And more information about that request is in your budget materials, and we'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Jake. Commissioner Dorsey?
Yeah, Adam, I had a question. Do you keep track of the statistics between the two offices? I'm just wondering if the 6th Street office is underutilized, because when I come into the courthouse, I always see people lined up, and the one or two times I've been out to the 6th Street, there's nobody there. And I'm just wondering if people are adjusting to that yet.
It's been a slow adjustment. So it's difficult because every month you have a new round of customers who might not know based on the registration month. So we may get the whole population in March, but in April, nobody may know, and we got to kind of start all over again. So we've been working with Carrie Britt to push out that information that 6th Street is there. So we've been kind of going back and forth with staff of where we need the most of our staff. Right now, we're split just in half right now, and it's been working pretty well. We made the adjustment last month of how to do that. So, but 6th Street is slowly picking up. Over the course of each month, we're getting more and more people out there. So we're starting to see that split. Ideally, we would have more customers go out to that 6th Street office because it does provide more space for our staff. And of course, more waiting space for customers. But we'd assumed it would take a year to year and a half to really get everybody on board with the 6th Street office, but it's a slow process.
Jamie, I wanted to give you a chance as I looked over your budget. Some things that I thought would go down, you had such a large increase because of the election last year. And then this year, I thought they would go down and they sort of didn't. I'm trying to get to my pages here, quickly find it, but I just want to give you some opportunity to talk about what you're seeing from an election standpoint. I noticed like your postage went up significantly from what it was in the past, and just talk about how elections have changed.
Well, the first part of that is with revenue neutral, it used to be we would kind of lower it as we had different election cycles, but with revenue neutral, we keep it at a presidential level. We're seeing a couple of things. The cost of commodities continues to increase. I just got notice from our vendor due to tariffs and stuff, they're going to increase everything by 5% immediately. Paper has become more expensive. A lot of the things and then the post office, you just saw, I think everybody just saw the postal is going to increase more. So we've built that in. And then the legislature's been doing some things. I mentioned it in there. Our ADA machines, we would buy ballot paper for them. It cost about $6 a roll. It would last 7 to 8 years. The legislature passed a rule last year that those have to have a special watermark on them, and it has to be changed every year. It now costs $25 a roll, and we have to remove them, get rid of them, and do new rolls each year. So that has things like that they're doing is just exponentially increasing the cost of elections. And then I also mentioned like the legislature put a constitutional amendment on the August ballot next year. That like doubles the cost of that August election because now you have triple the ballots because you have to have ballots for unaffiliated voters, Republican voters, and Democratic voters. And we learned that with the constitutional amendment in 22 when we basically run 2 general elections. And then the other part of that is the House Resolution 22, which is called the SAVE Act. We've been through the citizenship portion of, requiring citizenship. That's in Congress right now. If that were to pass, our administrative costs will go up exponentially because of what they're requiring each voter would have to provide to us and what we'd have to record. So those are kind of the things that are built into that.
So these are state and federal expectations for voting. And the argument is that it protects voter fraud. What's our voter fraud in your estimation here in Douglas County?
Well, we really don't have a lot as far as like what we usually end up with is what I would call unintentional fraud. So a husband signs a wife's ballot, a wife signs a husband's ballot. That's considered fraud. We'll get that fixed. But we already have a lot of things. I mean, like the watermark on that paper already had things that we checked. There was no way that anybody was going to kind of fake that paper. But they said it needs a watermark. And so that's what we're doing.
Or what we have to do, right? Yes.
Yes. I mean, a lot of it's being driven by a narrative that just is not true.
Thank you. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any more questions for this group. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We'll start up again at 11 o'clock. Oh, wait. Do you want to?
I think we could try to start the core services early. We've got Jimmy and Starla here, and I can get the rest of the admin team here. So if you wanted to give us 5 minutes, we could start.
5 minutes, 1:45. All right, great. We'll start then. Thank you. It is 10:45 and we're now getting to meet with core services. This wraps up our budget hearings and I'll turn it over to Brooke for our overview.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to introduce our central service departments. Central Services plays a vital role in ensuring the seamless day-to-day operation of Douglas County government, comprising of information technology, facilities, maintenance, and administrative infrastructure. These departments ensure that every county department, from land records to public safety, have the tools, systems, and environments they need to serve Douglas County citizens effectively. Information technology staff safeguards critical systems and data. They support digital innovation and deliver services such as GIS or geographical information systems, IT support, and software and hardware infrastructure management. Facilities maintenance staff ensures that county buildings are safe, efficient, and well-maintained to support uninterrupted service delivery. Administrative infrastructure provides strategic coordination and operational continuity across key areas, including behavioral health, public health, human services, criminal justice, finance, budget, purchasing, and grants. Together, these departments are supported by 68 and a half roughly full-time equivalent employees, which represent approximately 58% of the combined annual operating budget for central services departments. The work of central services departments are foundational to the county's ability to deliver responsive and reliable services to residents of the county, and central services represent 8.4% of the county's general fund operating budget. Included in your packet today, I think the only supplemental request that hasn't been talked about so far is the additional support, to add an additional 0.38 FTE to an existing staff member. This would make the position full-time and benefits eligible, and that information is detailed in that request.
Just for the administration.
And that's just for administration.
Then, but IT has supplements.
Yes, IT also has supplemental requests for additional FTE staff as well as maintenance. Some of those staff requests have been built into the recommended budget, and they are outlined on your budget option sheet. Commissioners, I'll turn it over to you for any questions.
Thank you. Okay, commissioners. It's that time.
I got a question. How do you hire a part-time information IT specialist? What do they do when they're not here?
Thank you. My name's Starla Jones. I'm the Director of Information Technology. And the part-time individual, I'm not sure what they would be doing outside, but the reason for this part-time person is I have a staff member who has been spending time doing some of the administrative functions in our department, where they are very strong from an systems administration and Microsoft administration, as well as development. And so my hope and goal was to remove those administrative tasks away from that individual so they can be more productive in some of the other areas.
So they're really a full-time employee, but only spending part of their time with you?
With Douglas County, yes.
Oh.
They're part-time. It's just part-time only.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This would be a 0.5 FTE. They would be benefits eligible.
Does somebody have their mic on their computer? Okay, sorry, I just like,
Yeah, there's a
I'm hearing
slight
it,
echo.
so.
It's me.
Okay.
Shut her down.
The full-time FTE for IT analyst, can you talk a little bit about that person and how that might support future reporting and data?
The reporting. And I am prepared to show you some of the dashboards that my development staff has been very busy this year creating. But the reason for this position is actually to support the growth and the remodel. The remodel is going to have around 14 plus network closets. Currently, I have an engineer who is the responsible party for the configuration for connecting all of the county. And so this is really important for us to have an additional engineer that will be able to assist this person for the infrastructure. Not only here, but we will also have the emergency management staff over at the PSB. And so Douglas County engineer is responsible for so much of the infrastructure and connectivity. And I find it super important to have an additional person to help get that up and operational. Otherwise, we will lose support and efficiencies for our day-to-day activities, and we might not be able to meet the deadlines for the opening of the JLE and the construction of the PSB.
So then this individual, so we heard earlier in the week from the sheriff and I think it was the district attorney too.
It was Tony.
Tony, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Their IT needs as well. So this individual will work like in collaboration with those teams in setting up these different systems?
We work in collaboration with all departments, including the sheriff's office. We're very fortunate. When I got here, we started to meet on a regular basis with Brad Schwab, who is the IT manager with the sheriff's office. And he's been here a long time, as well as one of my engineer. And the collaboration has really grown and we work well together. My position would be just to help get this configuration up and operational and the integration. Each closet requires networking switches and routers. We also have to have your wireless infrastructure, all of the cable management. They've been, during the construction projects, it's like, what color do you want? Well, the cameras maybe could be a pink color. And so all of those networking configurations and setup has to be done. And we are very much the responsible party for the JLE. And then the PSB, we will be the responsible parties as well as other entities to bring our infrastructure into the PSB and then connect all of that, because we in IT are responsible for the telephone system. We are responsible for your printers. They have to use the finance enterprise system. They have to clock in and out on our NovaTime system. There's many things that we collaborate with and work well together, but Douglas County IT is the responsible party to get all of those connectivities there.
Perfect. Thank you so much for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Starla, as you explain that, is this something that we just need for the startup of it, or will we need it ongoing?
We're going to need it ongoing. It's just similar to, don't take this wrong, Commissioner Kelly, but every time we add another department here for Douglas County, so the Senior Resource Center, so we are connecting them. So then that network closet over there, they have not going to need 9 wireless access points. They're going to need 25 PCs, 50 monitors, each of their conference rooms. This person is going to continue to assist us because the demand and the responsibility continues to grow here for Douglas County. And we're not able to meet the demand. Right now, the ratios for most counties is 1 to 25, and we're setting very low on that. Like we are, Sarah and I visited yesterday. She goes, "Straw 1 to 100."
Yeah, so from what I understand, if it's 25 is the number of like computers supported or people supported, the national best practice is 1 to 25, and we're at 1 to 100 at this point.
So we're struggling with getting the responsible times back to people. Our intake for help desk tickets, which does not count for the number of phone calls or things like that. We have around 300 a month that are tickets coming in, but then you also get somebody that stops by or they emailed you or they teamed you. And so you want to respond quickly. So we're just behind on response. And my goal when I came here, and one of the things was that I told Sarah was we wanted to be very efficient and be very helpful. Similar to the SRC, we met with her yesterday. Megan mentioned that earlier. With this process, she's very concerned about the IT because she does have some older individuals. And with the Medicare, Medicaid rollout in October 16th, she was very nervous. And I says, well, wonder if we have somebody there to set in the SRC to help be there just in case. And so I'm very much into supporting, and we just don't have enough staff to do that.
If I could add to that, like even just for these meeting setups, we used to not have IT support for these meetings. Now we do. So like the courts and the additional work that Starla's team does to support the courts. So even though it's an expansion, every time there's a trial, every time there's a hearing, there are multiple IT products in use, screens, videos, laptops, computers, all of those things, and all of that support is really coming, majority of it is coming from Starla's team.
I really appreciate the data that you just provided. Those were some of the questions I had. Like, could we see how many work tickets you're getting, how fast your response rate is, what your goal is on those response rates? I didn't know the best practice number for staff, but I think in future, or if you have that you could share with us, I think that would be helpful.
Very much so.
I've also asked Starla to put together kind of maybe more of a picture, an infographic that shows how what our IT does in relationship to Sheriff's IT and Tony's team and other departments. So, just sort of talking about the backbone, try to create a more of a picture, because I know sometimes we just think, well, network is network and network is network. And no, it's a very complicated system that they are pretty integrated on. Everybody has their role in place, but the backbone and the infrastructure of that is at Starla's team.
I just want to point out that the reason IT didn't used to have to staff these meetings and now they do is that we didn't used to record them. There wasn't an expectation that people participate online, like that entire expectation across the board for county services and departments. That's what's changed. It's not that we used to be able to, it's not that we used to be better at this ourselves.
No, it's trying to do these via Zoom hearings and to make this live on Zoom and the AV involved. I mean, even this, the screen, all of that is requiring additional support.
Well, and I just want to bring up one more comment. I mean, with supporting everything, but then also this cybersecurity and what we have done. We are responsible for Douglas County cybersecurity. The insurance covers all of the departments, including the sheriff's office. And in the last year, Ben, our engineer, we meet on a regular basis with Brad Schwab, and we have added them to our pen test on a regular basis last year, and we're going to do it again this year. But then we also have scans that are done, and then he and Ben and Brad Schwab have communicated back and forth regarding areas that need to be tweaked to help continue to keep Douglas County as a whole safe.
Can you tell us what a pen test is, Starla?
Ben, penetration. It's just a penetration test. And what that does is we will give them IP addresses and they will try to hack into those those IP addresses, similar to our website. Our website gets hit crazy amounts, millions of hits, but also we have AI bots right now that are running on it and trying to pull information or also hack. So our job expands a lot, and I just wanted to bring that up. So
We added a cybersecurity position last year, is that correct?
it was 2 years ago,
Okay.
and Ben's here. He's our cybersecurity man.
So the last time we added a position in IT was 2 years ago.
For Ben, yes. Oh, actually, we did a developer last year, but it has not been hired.
Okay.
We've interviewed. It's very important to make sure that you have the right fit in an IT department and also that you're going to be productive and everybody work well together. And I just haven't found that right person yet.
Okay, 'cause I know the last few years, there've been a number of positions requested and we've typically not filled them all, but I knew we had filled some, so I just kind of wanted that history with it.
Yes.
And also with the 3 requests we have in front of us this time, and one of those has been funded, the cheapest one, by the way. And so I was just curious if in your priorities of those 3, is that the position that's most needed, or is there another one that rises to the top instead?
Besides the part-time, instead of the.
Yeah, of the 3 requests, do you agree that's the highest rated in your estimation?
I think I went with the less expensive option because I also know that my individual, that my systems administrator will be very productive with the administrative task being removed. But I am very concerned about the configuration and the additional requirements from our IT engineers to support the growth of the JLE and the connectivity there.
Thank you.
Oh, let me try to move you back into the panel, or you dropped out.
Should we ask our maintenance questions while Starla's pulling that up? Is that okay? And this is actually more a question for Sarah, to tell you the truth. So we've got the 2 added custodial positions and the 1 added facilities maintenance person coming on, slated to come on in July. Both of those were built in. And I'm just looking at the mill levy impact, which would be this year, but it's only, I mean, it'd be in for 2026, it'd have that mill levy impact, but for 2027, it would be double that because we're only, because we'd be hiring those in mid-year 26. Is that right?
Yeah, and we can, I think in your packet, you should have what the full year cost is. Not on that sheet, but in the detail.
I did the math. I was just wanting to make sure that we remember that when with those that are built in, we've also, kind of set a new base budget for the department that's a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
And I'll finish with Jimmy. So with those positions that I also connected to the new buildings, beginning those in July, does that meet the need that you'll have? And we don't know what the timing of the opening will be, but I'm just not sure how much training and onboarding is needed or if they can hit the ground running at that time.
Sure. As far as custodians go, it takes very little training. A couple weeks, we can cross-train with existing staff. So I'm not too worried about that. The maintenance position that I requested, as you can see, I'm also tying it to the maintenance staff at the jail. And so that person would be working with the 3 current maintenance staff we have there. And they would assume the role of maintaining the PSB. So while the person in maintenance would need to go through some training, he would have a really steady support group already there that can lead him into that process. So I have no concerns that they'll be able to train very quickly.
Thanks. Okay.
So our staff has been very busy working with some of our partners. And this one is actually public and live. This is our Douglas County Homelessness Dashboard. And we worked with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment.
And this one, I think one of the things I want to make the case for is, Jill, how many different partners are putting in information that, if you go back one, Starla?
I did, sorry.
Yeah, that how many different partners are putting information into this one dashboard?
Sure. And one correction, Starla, it's the Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition.
Sorry.
So Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition is the administrator of the Kansas Balance of State Continuum of Care, which is a function of HUD. So the COC administers the HMIS system, which is what the primary thing that feeds into, well, it's one big system that is fed, the HMIS system. This data requires multiple agencies, any agency that serves homeless folks, to participate in HMIS. So there's that.
Douglas County, how many agencies participate in HMIS?
A
dozen?
That are entering data into HMIS. It's probably agencies. It's probably, I want to say, 12 to 15. There's a lot of users, and we're working to get it to 90% or higher. 100% is always our goal, but we haven't been good in the past. Anyway, so Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition now has a process where they send a spreadsheet to Starla. Kristen communicates, Starla's department, send it to Soji. Kristen double checks, does the number look good? And then they publish it each month. So that happens each month. And then the Lawrence Community Shelter is submitting data on what they're seeing each month. So it's a lot of systems.
And this one is public. The other dashboards I'm getting ready to show you.
Are not public, but they're going to go public soon.
Wow. Okay, there it goes. This actually is going to stay internal.
Oh, yeah.
This is the court case index dashboard. We worked for quite some time to get some data out of Odyssey, and we are now able to pull.
Enough to say what Odyssey is.
Oh, sorry. Odyssey is the case system that is required for our District 7 courts out of the state of Kansas. And so we are thankful we received that data, and then we have built, again, Soji has built a dashboard for better handling and viewing of some of our case information. This one is under development, but we're very excited about the specialty court dashboard. If you look at the left, this is the way the MS Access database and some of the reporting. One of my developers has done is made it into a web application because we have outside agencies to enter the information, and this is what the future is going to look like. These are some of the shared entities. I know this has been a big topic. Some of the shared solutions between the sheriff's office and the Douglas County IT. Again, internet access, NovaTime, which is our time and attendance, telephone system, printers, our on-base database management system, document management system, our finance enterprise, GIS mapping, which is fed into the Spillman Flex Solution Motorola so that the folks know kind of where to go. Cyber insurance, again, is our coverage, and we do a ton of custom applications for individuals. And then on the sheriff's side, they're very willing to help us with Spillman. We have about 120 installs of that.
Tell them what Spillman is.
Spillman is the
Jail management, and it's also the software system behind Emergency Communications Center. So it holds both law enforcement and public safety answering point data.
These security cameras in the last year, Brad Schwab and his team have helped us. We've upgraded the camera solution. And then instead of some of our buildings having off camera solutions, we're bringing those in so that we have one camera solution for the county, which will save us overall costs. Same thing on the door badge access controls. The sheriff's office manages the door badges for our all employees. And then we tagged in for our printers, and you can print with your badge. And so, and then also the cable management, we've helped make it so that there was an easy cable management process there. So, okay.
I don't know who to ask, and I don't know how to evaluate this on my own, but we've got IT requests from our IT department and from our sheriff's office. And both of those kind of at least partially talking about transitioning into the new building. How would we prioritize if we were, say, only going to fund one?
I think that's a tough question, and I've thought about that. You know, I think there are legitimate needs in both departments. And what I would say is the sheriff's office security or sheriff's office request was previous to the building. I don't know that it's really related to the new building and the additional stations there. So they've wanted some additional support for their IT for quite a period of time.
But so has IT. They've had positions that we haven't been.
That's true. And all I can say, commissioners, is, and I know you've been generous in adding support to IT. But every time we ask for a new application, every time we ask for a new set of data, every time you want it, we completely changed how departments submitted their budgets last year, both departments and outside agencies. Every time we do that, it just requires more staff to maintain. So I understand it's a tough decision for commissioner staff to make when balancing these priorities.
Question for Carrie real quick. This, if I understood it right, this is adding to a person who's coming over from Senior Resource Center. We do have other communications people within, I'm thinking the sheriff's office, right? The sheriff's office, is there any other? And so if we didn't fund this, would the balance of that person's time stay with the Senior Resource Center?
No, my understanding is that person would come under me and the administration, and then would work on countywide
stuff. Thing.
Mm-hmm.
If we expand or if we don't, is it the same regardless? Okay, but if
there'll be a conversation.
Yeah, I'd say that if we don't add to the position, they're going to be devoted to the duties that they already have at the Senior Resource Center, because that's been taking most of their time so far. They might have a little capacity to do a little more.
Yeah, I would say I've talked to Megan about this pretty extensively, and right now her staffer works 10 hours a week, and she's focused on social media only. The skill sets that this person has includes video, writing, website content, design. So I think it's a great opportunity for us to begin to strengthen our county communications. As we've all been talking, the demand is growing. I will say that county departments and elected offices have growing communication needs, and these include news releases, events, flyers, website, social media outreach. 6 years ago when I started, we didn't record the commission meetings. Now I handle the recordings. I upload them to YouTube and promote them. Even just with these meetings like this week, it's taken up a lot of time. Yeah.
Okay.
Hope that answers your question.
Yep, it does. Thanks.
So the sheriff's office has a communications specialist. Douglas County as a whole has a communications specialist. And then the senior resources person is expected to stay with them. Like that would be the only department of that size that would be having the support in that capacity. I would say I think there are some fundamental differences. Like when we talked about bringing them from a community partner into a county department, like how much consumer facing and client facing time that they have. So that may be appropriate, but I was just curious because I hadn't thought about it before.
I think it's 10 hours a week is what that SRC position's doing right now. So.
Commissioner, I didn't understand that conversation in the way that maybe you did. I understood that it's an opportunity to bring somebody who is already doing communications work on a very part-time basis to work with Carrie and be able to work on county-wide communications. And that, maybe the 10 hours a week might still be somewhat dedicated to Senior Resource Center, but it also might not because of the fundamental differences of what they're changing. But so I understood it to be that it would enhance countywide communications and not be dedicated still.
Correct. And the other thing just to think about is there's no real trained backup for me when I'm out of the office. And so, when there is a building fire or a cyber attack or unplanned closures, I'm the one that helps coordinate that public messaging. And a lot of people don't even think about how I work for district court, consolidated fire, elections. So when things happen, I'm one of the first people I get called to help message that. And when I'm out, Sarah's my backup. So.
Yep.
And I did take that differently, so I'm glad for the clarification. I took it to believe if we were adding the 0.38 FTE, that's because they were coming in at 0.62 FTE for Senior Resource Center, and then we would bring them up to full time. Did I get all that wrong?
Yeah, this person only works 10 hours a week and this person has the skill set. So this is just like a really unique opportunity, right? This is someone that has skill sets wanting more hours. And so just to bring this position up to part-time would be a great help.
Okay, I understand better now. Thanks.
We have some additional information on countywide and employee benefits, and if commissioners don't have other questions for the departments. All right.
Commissioners, Brooke Sauer, Finance Manager. I just want to take a moment to talk about our countywide department. So in your proposed budget, you have a department, the number is 100,306,00. I wanted to bring this department up because it is a centralized countywide department, and it really does play a critical behind-the-scenes role in ensuring that every county department functions at its highest potential. This particular countywide department, it supports contracts related to our financial statement preparation and our compliance audit. You're going to hear from our auditors probably in mid to late August, early September. And then it also pays for things like postage and office supplies. I want to caveat that if a department has a cost recovery mechanism, you might see postage built into other departments, but that's because they're seeking reimbursement either through a grant or in our county clerk's situation, he may be seeking reimbursement from the state for some of those postage expenditures. So I just wanted to caveat that there. In addition, countywide also supports comprehensive training and professional development for county staff. And that includes skills building programs, support for licensing, certifications, and credential maintenance, as well as a centralized access for purchase of publications, association dues, and online learning platforms. The county does benefit from the efficient and cost-effective purchase of shared supplies and services, specifically related to our Office Depot contracts. We centralize the purchase of those, so we're not spending $7 for a pen over here, and then you're getting the same pen for $3 over here. So it includes furniture as well as other core commodities. Again, this approach really does ensure that departments have the tools and the resources they need when they need it. I also think it's important to note that countywide as a department, it represents 1.2% of the general operating budget. So it is pretty low. But I don't know that it has ever been brought up in a way to let you guys know that this is really how we run our central services and central purchasing to save the county money. Commissioners, if you have any questions about the county-wide It's weird to call it a department because it's really central services. I'd be happy to stand for those questions. All right, hearing none, I'd like to move the conversation over to the Employee Benefits Fund. This is Fund 218 in your recommended budget packet. And
Brooke, sorry, it's page 133.
oh, thank you. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. You
You're
live
really
in spread.
fast at these, yeah.
You live in spreadsheets. So everything is a
Yeah.
line item to you, and we're working off pages.
Certainly. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that addition. So the Employee Benefits Fund, it represents the second largest levied fund on the county books. Resources made available in this fund serve to satisfy employer payroll liabilities such as Medicare, Social Security, health insurance, unemployment, and payments to the Kansas Public Employee Retirement System, or CAPERS, for up to 550 full-time equivalent Douglas County employees and their families. The fund also supports health insurance for retirees and health department employees. Of the expenditures detailed in the fund for the 2026 recommended budget, health insurance alone represents 33% of the projected expenditures in 2026, followed by CAPERS at 17% and OASDI, which is Medicare and Social Security combined, that's roughly 15% of the expenditures in the fund. The fund also supports employee wellness programs and equipment lease programs as detailed in the county's personnel policy. The 2026 budget does incorporate an inflationary increase for health insurance premiums for the 2026-2027 plan year, which is set to begin next year on June 1st. Michelle will come to you with more details about that as we get closer to that plan year. The budgeted amounts for CAPERS also incorporate additional liabilities related to payout contributions for overtime based on a ratio applied using 2025 actuals to date. And I'm sorry, I skipped the KP&F employer contribution. That did decrease to 24%. And then the CAPERS employer contribution also decreased for calendar year 2026. So you'll be able to see a little bit of those savings as you're looking or comparing to this year's budget. OASDI, that again, Medicare and Social Security combined, that percentage has never changed in my tenure here, which is 10 years, but it's 7.65%, and that's based on projected salary for all county employees. And finally, unemployment rates are calculated based on 0.1% of annual salary for all employees, and this percentage has also never changed in my tenure here. So commissioners, I'm going to take a quick moment here and I'm going to share my screen because I want to talk a little bit about the mill levy decrease that we did for this year when we were talking last summer, and then what that's going to look like moving forward. Bear with me here just one quick moment. Okay, I'm trying to make this the whole page. Here we go. Okay, so commissioners, on our first day of budget hearings, I pulled up a slide and it had a few more funds on it, but I wanted to show this graphic because I really wanted to isolate just the Employee Benefits Fund. And I wanted to break that down a little bit farther for you to let you know what to expect moving forward. So, when I spoke on Monday and I was introducing this particular slide, I think it's really important to note here that the fund balance, the mill levy decrease that we did last year is in fact working. The 2025 fund balance was at 62.4%, and we're projecting by 2026 that will decrease by 19.6%. And then to further that, we're projecting that by 2027, we will realize another 22.1% decrease projected. So we decreased the mill levy from 7.708 to 5.805. The 2026 budget does maintain that original mill levy reduction at 5.805. So the 2026 proposed ad valorem tax in that fund with that flat mill levy is the 13.5 roughly $1 million to get us down to the targeted fund balance of 20% going into 2027. And then, but by 2027, we will need to likely build in a little bit of that funding back. So with the current projections, I'm projecting anywhere from $750,000 to a $900,000 increase, a revenue increase that I would need year over year, but we would need to build back more into the mill levy because the fund balance is now reduced to a more normal level. And staff is projecting that right now to be at about $3.8 million. I'll remind commissioners that the value of one mill today is $2.1617 million. So using today's values, those could increase, those could decrease. And, you know, as we move through the next year, you know, those are some of the things that we're going to want to think about as we close the books for 2025 and 2026. So if we have a good year in 2025 and 2026, well, that number goes down. And the tax support requested might change. So, you know, again, a few considerations to ponder would be that increase or decrease in property value, of course, but also plan design changes. So as we look towards future years and future plan years, if we're changing out-of-pocket maximums, if we're changing coinsurance and deductibles, that will all play a major role in how we develop future year budgets and what we require for revenue in this particular fund. I know when we had these conversations last year, Sarah had mentioned the possibility of, you know, in a few years, we will have to build this back in. So I just want to continue that conversation today and just bring this forward to you because, you know, if we have a good year this year, you know, that's what we hope for. That will decrease that number. Another thing to consider, you know, going back to the increase in value. So just in keeping the mill levy flat, if you look at the difference in ad valorem budget, ad valorem budgeted for 2025, or I'm sorry, 2026, that $546,000 value that's listed on that bottom line, that is the capture of the value increase, even just keeping that mill levy flat. So that's another thing to consider too, because if we have the same increase year over year for next year, we could realize an additional amount there too with that increase in value. So there's a lot of factors that go into play here, but I just wanted to, again, get this in front of you and continue that conversation, you know, and see how we move forward with that. Commissioners, I also want to just lightly, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I'm happy to send this to you guys afterwards if you'd like to see it. But I want to take just a brief moment and talk about the Workman's Comp Fund because I do.
Can I ask employee benefits before we move on?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I know you mentioned like all the variables that will go in year to year, and without going into that so much, but for this year, we can say that the 7.7 mils was too much because that was, growing the account and we didn't need it to do that. But the 5.8 mils is shrinking the account. What would be that maintenance level? And I think we only have the data for like this year, but it'd be somewhere in between those two, right?
Quite possibly. And I just think it's going to take time for us to figure that out. Ultimately, these expenses are going to go up. So the question is do they go up at a rate higher than the rate of mill levy increase? So
Yeah.
we're just going to have to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to think forward to like, if there has to be a mill levy readjustment there, like how do we plan that along with other big projects that may come forward, like.
And I'm hopeful in some ways that this could be like similar how we reassigned some mill levy from the general fund to road and bridge, that maybe I could manage that inside the proposed budget if it's less. So I think that's one of the things I'm thinking about. I would say, I know it's very early in our plan year, but we did get our 1 month dashboard from Willis, and we're running at 102.9% of our plan design so far this year. So we did talk to commissioners that I think our run of good luck we will eventually have a plan year where we will exceed budget. So, and then if changes happen at the state level on capers and KP&F payments, all of those are factors that we can't control. So I think there's a good chance we're going to be able to hold steady, but I wanted it to be on commissioners' radar that there's a chance that this fund will need additional mill levy support in a future year.
Thank you, Sarah. And commissioners, I'd also like to add to that staff did use an inflationary value to calculate that future year, but there are so many variables that could change between now and then that could affect that. So
I have a question. You said the 1 month was 102%. What was all of last year's percentage?
I don't know if I have that off the top of my head, Commissioner, but we can get that for you. Oh, Michelle's got it. Great.
Really hoping I could get away with just being an audience member.
Yeah. You're present, you can be subpoenaed.
Yeah. So we did end, so the numbers that you're looking at in the dashboard that we just got, I think yesterday or early this morning, we did end at 103% of budgeted for last year, for the last plan year. So that was about $300,000 over budget, which this is the highest number we've had since I've started here. I've been here almost 6 years, and we've come in under budget every year. So
meaning the last time Sarah managed the fund.
She says that all the time. So yeah, this last plan year, we also track our large claimants. Again, like Sarah said, so much of that is out of our control. Our large claimant, our claimants that hit our individual stop loss. So the stop loss is the insurance that we buy that will help pay for claims once the county pays so much out of their budget, the stop loss company picks up and pays. That has really been pretty steady as far as the number of belly buttons that hit that stop loss. But we do see higher cost claims coming through in that stop loss. So while we have the last couple of years, we've had 6 individuals hit that stop loss amount. The dollar amount's going up. So it's more severe illnesses and injuries, and just the cost of medical care in itself is going up. So we do have a plan to do an RFP this year for the start of the 2026 plan year. So we'll really do our homework with that RFP to see if there's any cost containment measures, any savings that we can recognize by either switching TPAs or, right now we use a network of doctors with Cigna. Maybe, we switch to an Aetna or, we don't know what that's going to look like yet, but I think it's time to do that homework and that due diligence.
Commissioners don't have any questions on that. I think we are done with hearings, and I'd like to talk a little bit about our work moving forward.
Check in with commissioners. Nothing else on that?
Oh, you want to talk about,
Call.
go ahead and tell me your work comp thing.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Michelle. Commissioners, I just want to take a few minutes to say a few things about the work comp fund. It is a separate fund. It's Fund 256. The workman's.
What page?
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I don't have that.
Does it have its own page, budget report?
151.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioners, I just have a few brief comments to say about this fund. It's, the workman's compensation, it's calculated based on a classification assigned by job function. So if you are plowing streets and removing snow, your workman's comp percentage is different than my clerical workman's comp percentage. The percentages range anywhere from 0.1%, which is more the clerical, to anywhere to 5.15% for police, fire, and then municipal employees. We pay a little bit more for them. The 2026 employment rates, unemployment rates, aren't available until January of the next year. They generally don't move a whole lot from year to year, and they're based on claims. The 2025 rates were in fact used to calculate the 2026 values because they're just simply not available. So I just wanted you guys to know that's that fund is there and that's how we use that fund. And I'd be happy to stand for any questions about the percentages used, the job functions, or anything else.
We are self-insured for workers' comp, and the state, we have to apply to the state for that application for self-insurance. So they also provide a level of oversight to make sure that we're appropriately funded in that fund. Julie Sackrider is here and she manages our work comp fund.
What is that risk management insurance cover?
I think that insurance is the stop loss, isn't it? Above. Oh, yeah, the excess. So in the work comp world, it's called excess coverage, which means if you get a claim that meets a certain amount, then they'll pay everything above it. And in the health insurance world, it's called stop loss. That's all we have for you, commissioners.
Okay. We wanted to talk a little bit about tomorrow and our deliberations. Sarah, do you want to sort of outline what so for the public, after these deliberations, we start working on some spreadsheets, sort of identifying where each commissioner's priorities are. And
I like to call it a worksheet because it's
worksheet.
Yeah, just so it's a draft tool for commissioners to use to develop their thoughts on how to move forward with deliberations. And then so it includes every line item, every department that you have in that budget book, and every supplemental request. If in the past, when we had 3 commissioners, if we had a commissioner that wanted to talk or about one item, and so I just say wanted to talk. So because sometimes that is a decrease, sometimes it's an increase, sometimes it's just I have questions about. So it isn't necessarily I want to fund this dollar amount type thing. We had if we had 3 commissioners and one commissioner wanted to talk about it, we talked about each item. Now with 5, that's a different bar. Generally, those conversations take a period of time. As I said, if you talk about every item for 20 minutes, for 5 commissioners, that's 4 minutes apiece. Then I'm concerned about us getting through deliberations in three mornings next week. So one of the things I was wondering is if you all wanted to meet tomorrow morning to talk about some bigger picture things, or if there are thoughts around LDCFM and or Bert Nash or some other bigger things that we could then program in or resolve or begin to discuss. Because remember, if we wait till Monday, my ability to get information back to you is going to be really tight. So if you have questions about things that you're going to want to know more about, tomorrow's the better day to get it, or even today if we have time. And I was going to have Jake maybe go over the list of things that we're putting together for you as follow-up information. If you want to come to a microphone, Jake, or bring a microphone to you. Maybe you could start with that, Jake.
Let me pull that up.
So one of the things while he's pulling that up, one of the things I thought of is that if commissioners indicate on their worksheet that it's something that they're interested in talking about, if ideally you could get that to staff by Sunday at 5, we would compile those worksheets. We would know that we've got more. If I had 2 commissioners that were interested in talking about something, then we would develop that list of we've got 2 commissioners interested in talking about something. And then that would help drive your discussions on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I do want to state here that sometimes, you're allowed to sort of say, this is something I really, really, really want to talk about. Even if another commissioner isn't supportive, obviously that's something we can make time for. I am just worried about, I want you to have all the time you need for deliberations, and I'm just worried that 3 mornings now is not enough.
So in terms of kind of triaging those conversations for line item by line item, maybe we cover all the ones first that have 2 commissioners interested, and then if there's time, open that up to if there's other things that I could see having something I wanted to talk about, even if I didn't expect to carry the day.
Yeah. And as I've said, as you're working through your worksheet in terms of the things that you're interested in perhaps funding, sometimes commissioners sort of give us an email narrative, to explain what their thoughts or questions are while they're doing that. So it's whatever works best for you in this process to help you clarify what it is that you're interested in bringing forward to deliberations. It's the way I would put it. There's a lot you've heard about in the last week that is not going to get brought forward to deliberations. One of the things I know, I was asked by a couple commissioners related to supplemental requests and the Behavioral Health Fund. And I'm willing to provide commissioners with some backup on this if you want it. But roughly, my estimation is that our unused capacity in the Behavioral Health Fund is around $1.6 million. So it would be ongoing capacity. So ongoing revenue with ongoing expense, there's room in there for about 1.6. That's it. If you want me to show my math, I'll be glad to show you my math tomorrow, but it's a little squishy depending on, sometimes those things change from year to year. But so when you add up the number of supplemental requests that are eligible for the Behavioral Health Sales Tax Fund, they are far in excess of that 1.6. Now, but if it's a one-time, there is sufficient one-time dollars to fund those. And our spreadsheet, that worksheet you have, is really built around mill levy. It's not really built well around behavioral health sales tax. So as you begin to think about that, just know that you may want to make a list of like, hey, here are the behavioral health items I'm interested in. It may not quite balance out on the worksheet quite the way you want it to. So, and do commissioners have questions for me about deliberations or thoughts on how to proceed? Or what you'd like to talk about tomorrow if I bring you back in?
I think we need to meet and hit the big items that you already mentioned, the fire and medical, Bert Nash. I'd like to talk about your salary proposals.
Sure. We could talk about them today if you want. I mean, we've still got a little bit of time on, if you have questions on market merit.
Are there any others commissioners would like to sort of tackle before? And I I appreciate that, Commissioner Dorsey, because I think some of those very large requests that we have will help if I can get a feeling of where the commission is sort of leaning towards, will help me develop further priorities. So for example, if we're thinking of going beyond Sarah's recommendation when it comes to LDCFM, that's a big price tag and will impact the rest of the decisions down the line. Are there other things besides what Commissioner Dorsey mentioned, Bert Nash, LDCFM, and market merit?
I'm interested in also talking about Heartland tomorrow.
Heartland? Yep.
Heartland Health Clinic.
Clinic.
In Heartland.
Yes, clinic. Thank you.
I would like to have more of a maybe general conversation. We have a number of requests in my mind that are, I put headquarters in this category, Bert Nash in this category, of organizations that are struggling financially to stay afloat. CSC, Center for Supportive Communities. I'd like to get a sense from my colleagues, like where we stand on that kind of funding request. Is that our responsibility to help, and to what degree we need to help those organizations in that?
I have a general question. In terms of moving from the hearing portion where partners know when we're talking about them and are able to tune in and watch or be here, versus the deliberations when they know that anything is possibly on the table. But for the end of today, I think it's okay to talk about internal price tag kinds of things. But if we were going to get into talking about anything related to community partners, I feel like not having them have that heads up that deliberations would begin worries me a little.
Yeah, and we're scheduled to talk about, are you saying, Commissioner Willie, that you don't want to talk about it today? You want to wait till tomorrow?
Yes.
Yes, I would agree with that.
I'm just looking for a list.
Yeah.
Of kind of things to help us help you prepare for tomorrow.
Yeah, I would agree, Commissioner Kelly, that I do think a conversation focused on that sort of group of requests that you mentioned, which also includes the care center, to talk about those all together and what commissioners' thoughts are about that if we see those requests sort of just as distinct from one another, or if the thread or theme there makes a difference. So I think that that's an important conversation. Certainly, like Commissioner Dorsey mentioned, LDCFM and Bert Nash's significant requests. And then I think for me, otherwise, maybe just a little bit of time. There are several supplemental requests that are eligible for the mental health sales tax. Many of them are one-time and some of them are operational, what Sarah just highlighted. So I think we could spend a little bit of time maybe just talking about those all together and any commissioner's thoughts or approach to ongoing versus capital expenses in there. I think just a topic of conversation about mental health sales tax, especially for the reason that Sarah mentioned there, the way that our worksheet functions doesn't quite capture all of that information. So I think it'd be helpful for us to have some pre-discussion before we each individually dig into those worksheets.
And if I can add, thinking about one-time costs, what are we thinking about one-time costs? Do we want to use one-time costs for, I'm going to call them bailout funds. I heard all the last 4 days that they're not bailout funds, but do we want to use it for that? Do we want to stay with capital projects instead with the one-time the fund balance that we have in those? I just want to get a sense from commissioners where they're at there.
I kind of think maybe that's part of that larger conversation that we're thinking about for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. We can try to prepare the data for you to help make that a little easier to discuss, get some different tables and spreadsheets together for you.
Agreed. Yeah, for tomorrow. Well, and so as we think about those one-time costs then too, I would like to also then have a conversation about DECA's one-time request for the solar panels too, because that is like a one-time request. So then if we could just add that to the conversation.
Yeah, what I think what I can do is we can synthesize your budget option sheet down to just those behavioral health projects, and then we can sort them by one time versus ongoing and kind of just let you highlight that in that conversation tomorrow.
Thank you.
I have a couple of things that are themes that are minor and probably not worth putting on this list because this is kind of some big ticket items, but I'm not sure when to wrestle with it. And one is the IT positions where they're requested from different places within the county. They work together, but I'm struggling to find like where, well, how we evaluate some of those requests. And the other would be the case management piece, which we heard both last year and this year from a couple of partners, like what's the best place for that work to be happening. But I don't know how, we can have those at the time when we do our budget deliberations, but I've just, maybe people think about if they have thoughts that they want to share at the time.
Sarah, do you feel like you have what you need from
Yeah,
us?
this is super helpful. This is super helpful for us to structure our time.
I think the case management fits in with the behavioral health in a lot of respects.
Yep.
Okay.
Great, commissioners. We will, this is very helpful for us to try to, if you're comfortable with that, we'll try to put together some additional information to walk you through these pieces this afternoon and be ready to sit down with you tomorrow morning at 9. I was going to try to see if we can rearrange these tables so that you guys could be around more of a U so you could see the screen. And so staff, so we'll work on that as well, but we'll plan to keep you down here on the, in the well.
I'm just checking about two things that I think we put pins in a moment ago. Commissioner Dorsey, do you want to talk about longevity, the market merit and longevity things a little bit today since we?
I'd rather do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
I just want to check in about that. And then Sarah, you had asked Jake to
read that.
Pull something up before we went down another rabbit hole, and I just wanted to circle back.
Yeah, before we do that, I would say in your packet, we have the background information on where our the market study data is for each job family. And staff can provide you with some additional information on that tomorrow. Go ahead, Jake, what's your list?
Yes, I already have the information you asked for most of the questions you had. That includes the market merit, LDCFM, a blue-gray option, the KHD measures, investment income estimates, HCC, I'm forgetting what that stands for.
Which one?
Heritage Conservation Council, application and award list, the EDC fund balance information, some of the district court follow-up information, DECA solar panel questions, some information from CAC as well as the DA and sheriff related to the Child Advocacy Center follow-up questions, and then Center for Supportive Community supplemental documentation, CJS, Criminal Justice Services, juvenile intake data, and then information from Jill about the PSH request breakdown.
We'll email that to you this afternoon so you can have it a little bit in advance of tomorrow morning.
Will we be sure to let community partners know if they've made it into that discussion list for tomorrow, just so that, I mean, I think generally they thought we'd be doing deliberations starting Monday.
No, I say deliberations may start Friday.
Okay, then we're good.
Okay, there's nothing else, commissioners. We will recess until 9 o'clock tomorrow.